Maybe you'll remember several years ago in an NBA playoff game when Scottie Pippen refused to come out of the huddle during a timeout in the closing seconds of a close ball game. He was upset that he had not been selected to take the last shot, that Tony Kukoc was selected instead. And at the time, it was made out to be that Scottie Pippen was just a spoiled athlete who was more concerned about himself than the team. But the reality is that he wasn't viewing the relationship between authority and responsibility correctly, but it's a natural response. He felt as if he had the authority to make the call because, he had been on the dream team. He had been a multiple all-star. He had been an NBA champion. And he felt like he was then responsible for the outcome of the games. But the reality is that the responsibility lied with Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson has said multiple times that the thing that set him apart as a coach was his ability to get a bunch of grown men to think that putting a round ball through a round hoop was really important. And the responsibility for the outcomes of the games, regardless of who the players were, lied with him. Scottie Pippen had a natural reaction, though, and we see it in law enforcement personnel all the time. It's interesting that when you ask people why they join law enforcement, none of them say because of the money. But when you ask them why they've left law enforcement, and this is to include people that have left law enforcement in Washington Parish, very often they'll say the money. And what I think they really mean is that, like Scottie Pippen, if they feel like they have all of the responsibility to get things done, but are not given the authority to get things done, then they at some point will say, well, at least I ought to get paid for it. The reality is that guys will get fed up with seeing people promoted for political reasons. They'll get fed up with leadership that doesn't have their best interests at heart. They'll get fed up with watching people get promoted for political reasons and not operational reasons. And at that point, then they'll start to say, well, at least I ought to get paid for this. If you look from the outside in at an organization that's got a high rate of turnover, but consistency at the top, it's essentially leadership that puts responsibility at the lowest level instead of authority. We need to seek law enforcement that will give the guys at the lowest level the authority to do their job, and then the leadership is responsible for the outcomes, good, bad, or indifferent. So if you're looking for somebody to take responsibility for the outcomes of law enforcement decisions made in Washington Parish, help is on